So hey there, everybody, Josh Cantwell here, CEO at Strategic Real Estate Coach and Freeland Ventures. We're back with another edition of Strategic Real Estate Coach Radio. My special guest today is the Executive Vice President at Adam Data Solutions, formerly known as Realty Track. His name is Daren Blomquist. Daren, thanks so much for joining us today.
Yeah, great to be here. Thanks, Josh.
You got it. So you guys might be asking, well, who is Daren and what is Adam Data Solutions? So let me give you guys a quick introduction. Daren is the longest standing employee at Adam Data Solutions, formerly known as Realty Track. Many of you have probably been on their website, realtytrack.com, and maybe have looked at foreclosures or you've looked at some of the information they provide. But my guess is most of you are not familiar with the amount of information and the amount of data and the amount of intelligence, the amount of real estate business intelligence that Adam Data Solutions aggregates. There's really just two or three really big data providers to our industry, to the real estate industry. And so big banks and software programs and platforms and news networks, they rely on this big data to tell us what's going on in the real estate market. And Adam Data Solutions is one of the largest players that gives us that data to tell us what are the trends, what's going on with foreclosure inventory, what's going on with vacant properties, what's going on with financing trends. And Daren is one of the executives there that aggregates this data, interprets the data, and then spits that back to the marketplace to tell us what's happening in real estate. So Daren's spoken at our events. He's been on a number of other podcasts that we've had. He's one of our keynote speakers at our Flip and Fund summits. And he's going to be a keynote speaker at our upcoming Flip and Fund Summit. If you're not familiar with that, you can check it out at flipandfund.com/podcast. But Daren, give us a quick introduction again of you and of Adam Data Solutions, and what kind of data are you guys pulling together and providing for our industry?
Yeah, thanks for the introduction, Josh. And yeah, you're making me feel old. I am the longest standing or longest tenured, whatever you want to say, employee here at what's now Adam Data Solutions Realty Track. I started back in 2001, about 5 people as a startup. Realty Track was at the time and focused on foreclosures, and definitely seen a lot, come through a lot, really evolved as a person, but along with the company over that time period. And yeah, if you see the beanie in the background, that was to celebrate my 40 years old birthday, which I'm coming up on 41 now. I think by the time we make it to the next Flip and Fun Summit in Vegas there, I'll be 41. But yeah, so I've been around Realty Track and Adam for a long time. We've been through the foreclosure crisis, and that's really where people started to recognize our name is we were willing to talk about the foreclosure data. We were really the only ones who had such a national footprint of foreclosure data. And of course, you're not going to find folks like NAR or others talking, or MBA even talking much about foreclosures. They weren't talking much about foreclosures, and we were willing to shed light on that corner of the housing market. And that's really our mission as a company, is to bring more transparency to the real estate marketplace. And we did that with foreclosures, but we rebranded as Adam last year because we acquired a lot more data around that foreclosure, that core foreclosure data set. And it's called the tax deed and mortgage file, the full, basically every transaction that occurs in the country. We cover 90% of the country in terms of the counties that we cover. So that's where we are, and we're doing a lot of fun things. One of the reports where we feel like we're shedding some good light on the real estate marketplace, bringing transparency, is in the area of flipping. That's data we didn't have before with just the foreclosure data set. But now, by looking at these sales deeds and two transactions that occur on the same property within a 12-month period, that's a flip, and we're able to use that and really dig into the data and look at the trends at a nationwide basis and all the way down to even a zip code level basis. And so I know we'll be talking about that some more today. But yeah, that's a little bit about the evolution of Adam. We still do run the realtytrack.com website. Get a lot of traffic there, get a lot of investors using that to source properties, to find foreclosure properties and other off-market properties to purchase. So that's still a great resource.
Fantastic. So to kind of boil this down to how does this impact our listeners, real estate investors, real estate entrepreneurs, landlords, real estate agents across the United States and even internationally, what Adam Data basically does is they have a massive algorithm and a way to pull in all the tax, deed, mortgage files and find out what's happening with properties regarding foreclosures and vacants, and really see what's happening. And then they're able to really pinpoint in each and every major market what's actually happening with rental properties, with rent rates, with foreclosure data, the number of properties that are occupied, the number of properties that are vacant, the number of properties that are owner occupied versus landlord and rental properties. And they not only provide this information to individual investors, but they really use this data and license this data to major companies. I founded a company called RealFlow, which was a real estate CRM, and a lot of the different softwares that are out there that many of our customers use, whether it's RealFlow, whether it's FreedomSoft, whether it's Finding Motivated Sellers Now, whether it's Connected Investors, they pull the data into their softwares and they acquire the data from companies like Adam Data Solutions. So they're really the epicenter. They're at the tip of the pyramid, if you will. And a lot of the information we see, whether it's coming from softwares, whether it's coming from the news, it comes from Adam Data Solutions and companies like them. And so if you really want to know what's happening in the real estate market, you got to go to the source of the data, and that's you guys, and that's why you're here. What we specifically wanted to cover today, Daren, was what are some of the trends that you're seeing for the most profitable flips out there in the market? What are the styles of homes, the number of bedrooms, the number of bathrooms? What are some of the statistics and trends that you see that are producing the biggest, most profitable flips for investors? And of course, Daren, you're going to be sharing a lot of this at our upcoming event. The Flip and Fun Summit 8 is coming up. It's October 20th through the 22nd in Las Vegas, Nevada. Daren's going to be one of our keynote speakers, and you can get more information about that at flipandfun.com/podcast. And so let me go ahead and share my screen, and let me bring up this data, Daren. And why don't you just step us through this and tell us what we're looking at, and tell us what this kind of big data is telling us about how to find deals and what are the most profitable deals that are out there.
Yeah, thanks. And we really want to bring a big data approach to big data way of thinking. And big data is such a loaded word, but really it's using massive amounts of data in almost real time. Now with public record data that we're dealing with, it's not quite real time, but we're getting this within days of when these deeds are recorded at the counties, and being able to slice and dice the data in different ways to find new discoveries about what's going on and what makes sense from whatever perspective you're coming from for your audience, for investors. Certainly in looking at home flips, what we can do is go backward. We know when a home is flipped, and go backward and look at when that property was acquired by the flipper, by the investor. And we wanted to answer the question of what really are the best deals. And by the way, I would just say, to your previous point, it's kind of an exciting time to be in the real estate market, because you do have this confluence of a lot of availability of data, and we're doing our best to make that data as available as possible. And this booming real estate market that's drawing a lot of capital to the real estate market. And then you have a lot of startups, a lot of technology that's coming, great technological minds that are coming to the real estate market and saying, hey, how can we create efficiencies and do a better job of making this an efficient marketplace? And so we get to work with a lot of those companies you mentioned, as well as others that are doing very innovative, creative things with our data. And this is just one example of that, what we've done with the data in looking at how home flips were acquired. And this is looking at hundreds of thousands of home flips that occurred in 2016. We show our definition of a home flip is a property that's sold and purchased and sold within a 12-month period through both of those sales being what we consider arm's length sales or market sales, or not just sales between family members. And we show 193,000 of those approximately. And here's how they were purchased. We looked at cash versus finance. Is it better to buy with cash, or do you get a better deal? I shouldn't say better. I mean, there are different reasons, but we looked at just the difference in cash purchases versus finance purchases for the investor who is purchasing the home. And we looked at the discount, and the way that we determine the discount, just for full disclosure, is we compare the price of the property, the sale price, to the what's called the AVM, or the automated valuation model, which is a more sophisticated, it's a model that's applied to the data. If you want to think of a kind of consumer version of that, it would be the Zestimate that you would find on Zillow. But we have our own AVM that's more of a what we call a lender grade AVM that the lenders use. And we're comparing that AVM at the time of the sale to the actual price of the home. And what we find is with cash purchases, properties that were flipped and bought with cash, the investor bought them at an average of a 32% discount below that AVM, that automated valuation model. And finance purchases, they were still purchased at a discount, but less than half of the discount that the cash buyers got. So that was a very interesting finding right there.
Yeah, so the data tells us that having cash available to make offers and buy properties, you're going to end up getting a larger, almost double, more than double the discount, because you're paying cash and you can close quickly. And I'll give you a real example. I made an offer on a house about 3 weeks ago. It was on Yeager Drive in Strongsville, Ohio, and I made an all-cash offer. It was embarrassingly low, and the bank came back and accepted my offer, even though I was in a competitive situation. There were multiple other offers. I know for sure I offered way below a lot of other people, but I made the offer on a Friday, and I told them I could close the following Friday, and they accepted my offer simply because I was willing to close within 7 days. And I know that they could have got more. They could have got more from other people, maybe other people paying cash or other people getting financing, but they weren't going to close as quickly as me, and they weren't going to close necessarily all with cash. And so they came back and they accepted my offer. And I ended up not buying that property because I found out that there was even more substantial basement water damage than I had even expected. So I went back and renegotiated even further to get an even deeper discount with that particular lender. And they decided they weren't willing to go all the way down to what I wanted to pay. And so they ended up taking the property back to the market. But that's a perfect example that because I was willing to pay cash and close quickly, I got my offer accepted before any others. And they were actually willing to even come down even further because I was willing to pay all cash and close in a week. So the data tells us that, and in the real world, I see that as well. Now, what do you mean by the flip premium and the spread, Daren? Tell us how does that all add up?
Yeah, so the flip premium is when the investor goes to sell that property. They've finished the rehab, presumably, if they've done any rehab, and they sell it. And then, so we're looking at the same thing. We're looking at that sale price relative to the AVM, the estimated full market value of that property. And both flippers who purchased with cash, and this is still referring back to the purchase, not now this second sale, it's referring to the original sale, but investors who originally purchased with cash, they're selling at a lower premium than finance flippers, which, you know, maybe you have some insight into this. This is what the data shows. One of why that would be, why the purchase, the type of financing or lack of financing used to purchase the property has any impact on how much the property is eventually sold for. But it could be that there could be a couple theories there that could explain it, but what we're seeing is those finance purchases end up usually selling at a higher premium above market value. But then if
Sure.
you look at the spread there, the spread is basically just taking the difference between the purchase discount and the flipped premium. And still at the end of the day, even though the cash buyers are selling at a lower premium, they're still getting a bigger spread, basically a bigger potential profit, because it's the axiom of investors is you make your money when you buy, and you buy,
Right.
if you buy low, that's really going to go a long way to juice your profits on the back end. But I think the other big takeaway here is that both, whether you're using cash or financing to flip, you're coming away with a pretty good spread at the end of the day. And of course, that's a gross spread, and you'd have to take out any costs in between. So you have a 37% spread between your purchase and your sale. You take out whatever you've spent on carrying costs and rehab, and that's your net profit there.
Yeah. If you take let's say a $300,000 sale price, your spread there of 30%, you're talking, acquiring the property somewhere in the low 200s, selling it somewhere in the high 200s, almost a 40% spread between the purchase price and the sale price. So maybe buying it for, let's say, 200, selling it for roughly 275 to 280, and that's your gross profit spread. And then you have, financing costs, realtor commissions, etc. in between, and still plenty of room there. And obviously, this is the average. There's plenty of deals where people are wholesaling properties. They might buy a property for 50 and sell it for 60, and they're just taking a wholesale fee, and that's a very small spread there. And then you have, much larger deals in that 200 to 300 range, and the data is going to kind of tell us that. But those properties in that 200-300 range, the spread obviously in a $200,000-$400,000 house is just much bigger in dollars than a $100,000 house. And we teach our clients and our investors, you might start in that 100,000, 150 range, and the quicker you move up to the 250, 350, 450 range, the better, because the spreads just equal more dollars at the end of the day. So, Daren, what does the data tell us about the flip, the profits, the purchase, and the premiums based on the years built, when the house is built, and the average age of the inventory?
Yeah, so the takeaway here, and this is granted a limited set of year built ranges, but basically the big takeaway for me here is the older the house, the more potential for a profit with a flip. And so I think that would probably match with what intuitively flippers think, but the more potential there is to add value to that home through rehab, if it's an older home that you can add a lot of value to by updating the layout, even, the bigger the potential profit. And so it's really a linear progression there. The oldest homes built before 1950 offer the biggest discounts and the biggest premiums on the flip side, unlike cash, where there was a big discount but not a big premium. And then it goes down from there. And then once you get down to 1990, the newer homes, there's just not as much potential to add value to those. And so you don't see as big of a potential profit there.
Sure. Yeah, this definitely plays into what we're seeing in the real world, in the marketplace. The data and what we see matches up in lockstep there. We definitely see older homes where we're able to acquire them, where there's roofs and windows and siding and plumbing and electrical. All that stuff needs to be done. And the older homes, 1940, 50, 60, 70, even in the 80s and 90s, but certainly the older stuff, they're typically a box with a bunch of smaller boxes inside of it, like all the different bedrooms, the kitchen, the dining room, the living room. They're all separate boxes, all enclosed by walls. And what we're seeing is the ability to acquire older inventory and then knock down some of those walls and open up the layout is a huge way to increase the value of that property and to get more money from it when we sell it. But certainly buying older inventory and then being in a situation where we reposition it, move some walls. We're not necessarily selling it for much of a larger premium, but we're acquiring them at deeper and deeper discounts because they need so much work. So, clients of ours and investors out there that are paying attention, those things that have just been built in the last 10 to 20 to 25 years, they're not going to be the best properties. You're going to want to go find, again, the ugliest property in the neighborhood, the worst property in the best neighborhood, but older inventory. That's how you're going to make the most money. How about the bedrooms, Daren? What does Adam Data Solutions tell us about the profits and the spreads by bedroom?
Yeah, so unlike the year built where there was the older you get, the bigger the potential profits. Here, it's more the middle of the road is where your biggest potential profits are going to be found. And again, I think this may be somewhat intuitive, but 3-bedroom homes, those basic starter homes that have the biggest pool of potential buyers are where flippers in 2016 at least got their biggest spread. Now it's actually interesting because it's pretty even there between 2 and 3-bedroom homes. It's pretty close there at the end of the day. And one thing I hear about out here in Los Angeles is some of the flippers. I don't know if you have that in the Cleveland area or other areas you operate in, but there are these older homes, so it plays into that older inventory piece that were built back in the 1940s that have 2 bedrooms. And what the flippers are doing in Los Angeles are taking those and adding a bedroom. And so they start out as 2-bedroom, but they end up as 3-bedroom. And that's definitely a way to add value to the home.
Yeah, we definitely see that. We tell people all the time, like, don't ever buy anything less than a 3. And if you do buy a 2, make sure it's got room to convert it into a 3. We've done that on a number of properties, bought a 2-bedroom that had, maybe a den or just open square footage somewhere, or it had, a mud room off the back that could be repositioned, and added a bedroom. We've added, even just whole new square footage by adding an addition to properties to add another bedroom. But what I thought was interesting, Daren, was that, a 4-bedroom, a lot of people think like 4 bedrooms are better than 3. Well, when it comes to actually the purchase discount and the spread, you're actually much worse off buying a 4-bedroom, even a 5-bedroom. You're worse off on that. So I guess the lesson here is stick with the 3 bedrooms or the 2 beds that you can convert to a 3. And those are going to be your most profitable deals. That's really good information, because I always thought buying a 4-bed was better, and it's really not.
Yeah, that's what we're showing. I think an interesting point here on this graph too is that you can get a bigger discount. I mean, the data probably here is pretty thin on a 1-bedroom property. There are actually 1-bedroom properties out there, it may look enticing up front because you can get this big discount, but then you have to look. Certainly buying low is a big part of the formula, but you also have to think about selling that property. And that's where the 1-bedroom properties, you're not getting very much, hardly any of a premium on those types of properties.
Yeah, and what about bathrooms? Similar. Obviously, people look at location, 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 and then beds and baths. So what does the data tell us about that piece?
Yeah, this one is probably a little more surprising. I would have expected that kind of the middle of the road, the 2-bathroom homes to be the biggest potential profit, just because there's the biggest potential pool of buyers here. But it's a little bit different than what I would have expected with the 1-bedroom or the 1-bathroom homes offering the biggest potential spread. And that may be, again, because we're typically looking at the number of bathrooms at the time the property was purchased, because this is happening within a 12-month period, so that information hasn't been updated yet with the tax assessor. So my theory here is that a lot of folks are buying the 1-bathroom properties and adding a bathroom, and adding value by doing that.
Absolutely. Yeah, we love doing that. We definitely see the opportunity to get a pretty substantial discount on a 3-1 or a 2-1, and then converting it into a 3-2 or even a 3-1.5. by adding maybe a half bath on the first floor or a second full bath in the basement, or if you have a large bathroom, converting it into two separate bathrooms. So we definitely like to see that, and they're definitely easier to sell as a 3.1.5 or a 3.2. And definitely the data here tells us that the spread is biggest buying properties with one bathroom. So between the bedroom spread and the bathroom, buy the 3.1 and convert it into a 3.2 or convert it into a 3.1.5. How about the biggest profit spreads for square footage?
Sure. Yeah, and by the way, maybe what I'll do for the Las Vegas one is do a combination of beds and baths instead of looking at them in a vacuum. That would be
Yeah,
interesting
sure.
to look at. So, yeah, with the square footage, it's actually, this one isn't as clear in the data. There's not to me, not as clear of a winner. They all performing pretty well. And I used a fairly limited range. If we went out to like over 2,000 square feet on the high end or under 1,000, I think you'd start to see your spreads drop dramatically on those much bigger or much smaller properties. But on these between 1,200 and 1,600, it's fairly consistent. But the winner is the 1,200 square foot home, which would probably be closest to your basic starter home that the most people would be able to be interested in and be able to afford is the winner there.
Yeah, there you go, guys. So, buy a 3.1, convert it to a 3.1.5 or a 3.2, about 1,200 square feet, and your spread's going to be about 40% of what you buy it for. So, buying something in that 200,000 range and then flipping it for 40% more, man, there's a lot of money to be made there. How about properties by distress type? Obviously, there's bank owned. There's properties that are in default or that are being foreclosed on, and they're somewhere in the foreclosure process. And then there's the foreclosure sale that's actually been scheduled, and the foreclosure sale has been scheduled, and it's basically up for auction, if you will. And what type of distressed property type carries the biggest profits?
Well, it's the bank owned here that you get the biggest discount up front and also the biggest premium on the flip side. So that's the clear winner, which surprised me a little bit. I think historically, if we had looked at this, again, this is 2016, we'd probably see the foreclosure sale providing a much bigger potential profit. But anecdotally, when I talk to folks who attend the foreclosure sale, which is the public auction of the home, those have become very competitive, and so it's harder to get a discount up front on those homes, and so I think that's showing up here in this data.
Mm-hmm.
Again, there's you can make some good potential profits on any one of these types of acquisition methods, but the bank owned is at the top of the heap, at least for properties purchased in 2016. I'd like to hear if you have any theory on that, but one theory, in talking to folks that explains that is these bank-owned properties that are still lingering in the marketplace tend to be the bottom of the barrel properties, just in terms of condition. But again, if you can find one of those scratch and dent properties in a good neighborhood, that's really a great opportunity for you
Yeah.
to get a good deal.
I agree with you in that, I've worked in all three of these different sort of distress types. So when they're in default, you typically have somebody who's over leveraged, that has more debt than the property is worth, and a short sale is needed to be negotiated, and the banks just aren't willing to deal. They're not willing to take that big of a loss yet. Then, so that makes sense that the purchase discount is not as substantial as bank owned. Then at the foreclosure sale, the purchase discount is actually even further less than bank owned. And I think the reason for that, again, in the real world, what I see is the people who show up at the foreclosure sale, they know that you're not allowed to buy at a sheriff's auction or a county auction with financing. They know that they have to pay all cash. So you have really serious investors there. Guys that have deep pockets, or they have deep private lenders that have a lot of experience. They're buying sight unseen. And those guys know what they're doing. it's actually a great place to meet private lenders is at the foreclosure sale at the auction, or when a foreclosure sale is scheduled, because there's typically never going to be those properties being purchased with financing. And so I think you just have a lot of real serious investors there that know what they're doing, that are really long in the tooth. So the discounts there are not as big. When you get into bank owned, I agree with you, Daren. There's bank owned, typically the banks are not taking care of the properties. We see them turning off the electricity. They turn off the water and the sewer. You're dealing with sometimes septic and well issues because the septics are not turned on. They're not running. You're seeing properties that have a lot of mold in the basement because the banks are turning off the electricity, and so the sump pumps are not running. And so you see properties that are substantially distressed, that are not being kept up at all. And oftentimes those properties can't be financed at all. So you, again, have all cash buyers, really serious investors that need to have really good contractors, really good general contractors to do that work and make sure they're done. We buy a lot of properties bank owned. And I was surprised to see, I don't think we're going to have time to get into it in today's interview, but still roughly half, if I remember correctly from the last time, Daren, you and I talked, roughly half of all the flips are still bank owned. Of all the properties that are being flipped within a year, they are bank owned. So there's still a huge opportunity to flip properties that are bank owned. How about this flip disposition with the buyer financing? So obviously, depending on the type of end buyer, I think this data is telling us, what is that? How much profit spread are investors making, or when flippers are making, depending on the end buyer's financing situation.
Yeah, so this is unlike all the other slides we've looked at. This is looking at the disposition, not the acquisition side of things. And the best opportunities, according to this data, is the FHA buyer. That's where you're going to get your best spread, and that's primarily because you get a good premium with the FHA buyer, and it's pretty even. Not too far behind are the VA buyers and other buyers using financing that you're selling to. Where as a flipper, and there may be situations if you're a wholesaler where this totally makes sense, but where it doesn't look as good, at least according to this data, if you're selling that flip to another cash buyer, another investor, of course they're looking to get a good deal as well, and so they end up buying actually those properties at a discount compared to the estimated market value. Again, there may be reasons that works out for you if you're a wholesaler and you're just taking the property and there's no real cost for you and selling it to another cash buyer. That may still be good, but with a typical traditional flip, selling to a cash buyer is not going to be your best exit strategy.
Got it. Yeah, fantastic. So just going back through the slides, and this is really what I was hoping to get as a takeaway for all of our listeners today, is for them to understand what are the best properties to flip. And what we've learned today, okay, is let's just go back through the slides real quick. We've learned when we look at properties, the ones that have the biggest spreads, okay, first of all, is buying with cash. Number two, properties that are older, really built before 1950, have the biggest profit spread. Properties that are a 3-bedroom, 1-bath, properties that are 1,200 square feet, that are bank owned, that are sold to FHA buyers. That is the number one flip strategy. That's the number one asset to flip. Paying cash, buying pre-1950, 3-bed, 1-bath, buying it with all cash, buying bank owned, and selling it to an FHA buyer. That is the number one asset class for home flippers. And that's using this giant data set of tens of thousands, hundreds of thousands of homes across the United States. This is data from 2016. And so that's the type of data, that's the type of information we're trying to get. And Daren's been so gracious to share with us. So Daren, when you come with us, of course, we're going to have you on other interviews between now and October. But in October at the Flip and Fun Summit, 8 We're real excited to announce a couple of real heavyweight speakers, yourself and a number of others that are going to be there to speak and teach about home flipping. You'll share all the latest trends of 2016 and 2017 and a bunch of other information as well. So we're looking forward to having you there in October.
Yeah, always love being there and meeting people who are on the front lines of home flipping and investing in general.
Fantastic. So now, Daren, this a lot of this data is available. You guys update this. Is it weekly? Is it monthly? And where can people go to actually download your free reports on what is happening in the marketplace?
Yeah, we're typically releasing a new report. It doesn't always have to do with flipping several different pieces of the market, but we're releasing a new report every week. And you can go to realtytrack.com/news. That's realtytrack.com/news. And you'll see our latest reports right there. Our latest flipping report was actually just a couple weeks ago for the first quarter of 2017, so you can see the latest findings there. And next week, we're going to be releasing an affordability report, which is also a very important report. But we're releasing a new one every week there, and you can read those and hopefully learn more. A lot of times we have heat maps where you can drill down and see what's going on in your local market as well.
Fantastic. So guys, check that out. realtytrack.com/news. Just put in your information and be on their distribution list to get all of their latest data and trends. Those are reports that I read all the time, and you should too. And as mentioned, Daren will be one of our keynote speakers at the upcoming Flip and Fun Summit 8, along with our other heavyweight keynote speakers. It's going to be a great time. You can check out all the details there and special offers, special pricing at flipandfund.com/podcast. So Daren, thanks so much for joining us. We're going to be releasing multiple podcasts and multiple interviews with Daren between now and October on other housing trends, flipping trends, financing trends. And when you attend the Flip and Fun Summit 8, you'll get all that and be able to have a chance to meet Daren in person. So Daren, any other final thoughts or words before our next interview we release with you?
No, I think that's enough. I mean, there's tons of stuff we can talk about, and this is just a taste of some of the great data we have to share, and looking forward to doing that.
Fantastic.
Yeah.
Fantastic. So guys, Josh Cantwell again, CEO, Strategic Real Estate Coach, and Freeland Ventures with Daren Blomquist, Executive Vice President at Adam Data Solutions. Thanks so much for being here. If you've enjoyed this podcast and want to learn more, just leave us a comment, a question, a rating, hopefully a 5-star rating in iTunes or whatever podcast platform that you're using. Leave us a comment, leave us a review. We appreciate that. Tell us what else you'd like to hear from us, and we'll make sure we bring on the best speakers, the best trainers, the best coaches to deliver that to you each and every week. So thanks so much for being here, Daren, and we'll talk with all of you very, very soon. Take care.